We're going to move ahead now to a tax question, and Michelle, you'll have the opportunity to fill this first. In 2001 and 2003, Congress passed major tax reforms that included, I'm going to name these and see how many apply to you. They included significant individual income tax rate reductions, lower taxes for married couples, increased child credits, increased retirement plan limits, phase down and repeal of the estate tax, expansion of Section 179 small business asset expensing, and temporary reductions in the taxes on dividends and capital gains. That's a lot of tax reductions in 2 years. However, many of these provisions expire at the end of 2010, and if not extended, will result in a tax increase on American taxpayers. Do you support extending these provisions?
I absolutely do support these, because these are the tax cuts that have fueled the growth in the economy that we saw throughout the early 80s. We're in a tough trough right now. There's absolutely no question, because the tech bubble burst and then the housing bubble burst. But the economy was on a wonderful growth trajectory up to that time. And it was fueled because we saw cuts in the capital gains and cuts in the dividend tax as well. Probably one of the cruelest tax there is a death tax. I'm a former federal tax litigation attorney, and my husband and I are small business owners. We have a business in Lake Elmo, Minnesota, and also down in Burnsville, Minnesota. We employ 42 people. We started with equity from our home. We started from scratch, and that's one belief that I have, that members of Congress should have to start a business, successfully run it, sell something, earn a profit before they go to DC. Because if there's anything I've learned, it's this: it is so easy to spend other people's money, and it makes your head spin to watch what happens in Washington, DC. Everything sounds like a great idea, and they want your money to pay for it. These tax cuts, if these go away, and unfortunately Barack Obama is not in favor of these tax cuts, the Democrat-controlled Congress is going to let these tax cuts expire, this will lead to these lower projections in middle-income America, because we won't have the capital to keep in the private sector. Why? That money will be in government's bank account. It won't be in your bank account. We are becoming more and more a big government society, where Barack Obama, who in his tax plan said that he wants to tax the top 5% of the people more. Would you know that 5% of the people in this country pay 60% of the taxes? 10% of the people today pay 80% of the taxes. 40% of the people pay no taxes at all. Under Barack Obama's plan, that will raise to 50% of the people. The people who will be taxed are the job creators. What are they supposed to do? They'll either have to cut your wages or let people go or raise prices. That's not good for the American economy, and that's why I support tax cuts. Al?
Well, I support those cuts, and except with the one exception of, I think that there needs to be reform in the inheritance tax, and we have proposed that. I do not support an inheritance tax that would cause the breakup of businesses. And you see that sometimes in terms of farms, in terms of small businesses, in terms of construction businesses. We cannot do that. We need those businesses producing jobs. But I think there are instances where it is just a straight wealth transfer. I think that can be subject to tax, and so I would not support the entire repeal of that. But the other ones, I think those are important investments in our communities. And I think that's one of the important things we need to do, is move back in the direction of tax policy that supports job creation, that supports the expansion of plant and equipment. Where has been the focus of our tax policy over the last 8 years under the Bush administration? It's been on wealth creation, and we've seen the excesses and the abuses that have gone on again as we have built greater and greater amounts of wealth that haven't trickled down. Remember? It was supposed to trickle down. Well, there are a whole lot of people out there still waiting for some moisture to come their way. This hasn't worked. It's another one of those areas where it's time for us to demand some accountability for the results. Representative Bachmann talks about how much taxes the top 5% or 10% pay, but the top 1% in this country earn on an annual basis 20% of the income. The top 1% earn now 20%. It was only 8% in the 1980s. Today it's 20% that is controlled by the top 1%. We support a fair tax. Warren Buffett. Okay. Now you know what I listen to. Okay. Warren Buffett has advocated that same principle when he said, look, it's not fair that when I make $42 million I pay an effective rate of 16%. And my administrative assistant who makes 60 pays 34%. That's what we've got in the system today, and it's got to change.
What my opponent is calling for is going back to a Jimmy Carter era tax style. I worked as a tax lawyer under the Jimmy Carter era tax policies, and the tax rate at that point was 70% on the top income earners. Think of the disincentives that are created when you have a 70% tax rate. And it's interesting to me how liberals like my opponent just love to bash people who become successful. If any of you watched the debate last night, what about Joe the plumber? Joe the plumber wants to become a successful business owner. That's what he wants to do. And Joe needs not to be punished. And wealth transfer is not what I call people passing their wealth on to their children or whoever they want to. The federal estate tax is the most immoral tax that there is. People have already paid tax on that money once. Why at the moment of death does government think it can come with its hand out and take that money? Warren Buffett, by the way, will pay 0 in estate tax. And do you know why? He's decided to give it to a foundation. He's not going to pay any estate tax. And that's why he has no problem with it, because he's wealthy enough to put it in a foundation.
Well, as a small business owner myself, I know how much of a struggle it is to try and get ahead, to grow a business, to build it. My wife and I have a transportation consulting business together. It is important that we provide for that. But if we're talking about a wealth transfer, folks, again, go back to that statistic. In 1980, the top 1% of the income in this country earned 8% of the total income of the country. Today, that top 1% owns 20%. The income transfer that's gone on in this country has been out of the pocket of the middle class to the wealthy, and we have seen the abuses and excesses of that played out again in the financial crisis that we're seeing in this country. It's always great to talk about that kind of wealth transfer and that kind of culture wars or economic class warfare. But it's only when it goes one way and never when it goes the other way. And we've got to change that.